welcome back to the show. I am here with John Walton, sitting in for Christian Taylor.
It's a tough seat to fill.
You're going to do your best Christian Taylor impersonation, I hope.
We'll see.
Good luck with that. And Skye Jitani.
Hi, Phil.
Sitting in for Skye Jitani. Let me do a theme song. Do we have any requests? I just did Wheaton College Chapel, so I just did some voices over there. What did they respond to? Actually, they responded to Mr. Lunt. People like Mr. Lunt. So I'm just going to do Mr. Lunt on the theme song, even though he's done it probably twice before. I don't care. I'm just going to do it again. Hey, it's a podcast. What do you know? Hey, it's a podcast. So there's no video. Hey, except there is video, of course, as we've now learned, because we have video now. What do you know? I need a new theme song. Hey, it's a podcast. So lend an ear. The Phil Vischer podcast starts right here. We'll talk to Skye and John Walton, too, because Christian's not here. She's still traveling for you. But she'll be back next week, and then we'll see where on earth she's been. Hey, it's a podcast, so lend an ear. The Phil Vischer podcast starts right here. The Phil Vischer podcast starts right here. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it seems like something should happen.
Something should happen, Phil.
Should something?
I'm a guest, so I had to do that.
I appreciate that.
I'm not a guest.
You're representing our live studio audience. Well, what are you proposing, Skye?
What?
You seems like you're proposing something.
I'm thinking of that scene from Animal House with the guitar in the stairwell.
Yeah, you know, I've actually never seen Animal House.
I wasn't allowed to see Animal House.
And that's the difference between your upbringing and mine.
Yeah, exactly.
I just picture a very small stairwell with a very small ukulele. Everything's to scale with like a hobbit instead of John Belushi in a toga.
That's what you want?
Yeah.
Or that's what this brings to your mind?
That's what needs to happen. You said something needs to happen.
What needs to happen is that the theme song is played by a hobbit on a staircase.
You don't know
with
that
a ukulele.
scene, do you?
No, I don't know that scene.
There's like a hippie playing his guitar there, and John Belushi comes by in a toga.
Yeah.
And he just looks at him for a minute, and then he grabs the guitar and just starts smashing it against the stairs and
Okay.
like totally destroys it.
Really? That's what comes to your mind when I play my ukulele? Someone smashing my ukulele?
In celebration.
Yeah. In a toga.
That does not.
It would be first century-ish.
That does not make me very happy. Or my ukulele. Who, by the way, I forgot to bring it in, but I was in Colorado Springs yesterday. We did a What's in the Bible event at Woodman Valley Chapel, which is much bigger than you would expect from the word chapel.
Okay.
It's actually a big church.
Yeah.
We did an event there, and somebody came who was a podcast fan. Several people actually came who were podcast fans, but one guy who was a podcast fan and a graphic artist, and he made a little poster of Plinky Pete, a little Plinky Pete poster.
Okay.
And I forgot to bring it in.
But you have it.
I have it, yeah.
Well, maybe
I'll bring it in next time.
You can scan it and have Bill put it on the video.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Right.
Oh,
More
maybe,
work for Bill.
Maybe we can do that afterwards, or maybe we'll just bring it in next week.
Or you could do that.
And people listening to audio, I'll describe it to you, and you'll say, "Oh, I see it in my mind's eye, and it's beautiful." But probably not.
Right.
And then this morning, so we kind of had a double booking. I'm a little tired. I'm a little sleepy. Because I got back to Chicago at 2:30 in the morning to the airport, and then I had to get my car, and then I had to drive home, and then I had to... Do you ever, when you get back really late, you feel like you can't just go straight to bed because you're too out of sorts?
Like, what's the point? Just stay up at that?
No, like I need a bowl of cereal.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
okay.
I do that quite frequently.
Okay,
actually.
yeah,
Late
like
night.
I need something to transition out of airports and all that. Honey Nut Cheerios. So I had a bowl of cereal. Okay, so I finally get to bed at about 4, and I have to do chapel at Wheaton College this morning. So I have to get up and drag myself in.
So you're kind of living the life of a college student.
I am, but I'm 47.
Yeah.
I'm past that. Do you pull all-nighters anymore?
No.
Like working on a book? No more all-nighters. Okay, me neither. I don't want to do that anymore. I did it for a while, but what about you?
I have had some late nights, but our youngest is 5 years old, so we're just getting back to regular sleep patterns now after a decade of not.
Do you think when you're finally back in a regular sleep pattern, your hair will start growing again?
No.
Oh.
That's over.
That's too bad. Okay, last week was Halloween.
No.
Although actually this will be... Yeah, last week was Halloween.
Thanksgiving.
I mean Thanksgiving. Did I say Halloween?
You have not had much sleep.
I'm short of sleep. Last week was Thanksgiving. Nothing notable about Thanksgiving itself, but some of the things going on in the culture were kind of interesting.
Okay.
Don't you think?
Sure.
Black Friday, we have a new habit of getting into fights at Walmart.
But did that happen on Black Friday or actually on
Yeah.
Thanksgiving because they open
I don't
early
know.
now?
I don't know if it was...
Because Thanksgiving has been officially renamed Black Friday Eve.
Yeah, right. It's a weird, it's a crazy,
I don't like
weird
this. It's
world. Have you
creeping
done
in.
any exegesis on Thanksgiving?
No,
Have you written
no,
any commentaries on Thanksgiving?
I haven't. There's probably one in the queue somewhere, but
Yeah, you can work on that. A devotional, anything? A turkey? Okay.
He needs to do an
theology.
expose on what really happened.
Yeah,
the first Thanksgiving.
So what's interesting is now that we have social media and Twitter and everyone has a phone, we're getting all these like real-time accounts of what's going on in Walmart. And it seems like it's almost becoming a sport to see what's going on at Walmart. So a fight broke out at Walmart and the ambulance had to come in Philadelphia. Somebody else, there's a fight at Walmart. Somebody else, laugh out loud at the people at Walmart that got in a fight over a toaster. Another one, there's a fight at Walmart for real in Atlanta. Walmart was live, seen people fighting over towels. Never will I go to Walmart Black Friday again. I got stuck in the middle of a fight over a stupid tablet. Thank God we got out ASAP from Walmart because too many people were starting to fight. Witnessed a fight at Walmart over a $29 tablet. Fist fight over Xbox at Jordan Creek Walmart. Another one, fight at Walmart. A report of a fight at Walmart in the Garden Center on Morgantown Road. What would you be fighting over in the Garden Center?
The last Christmas tree.
Oh, that's beautiful. I think that's a Max Lucado book, isn't it?
The
Fight
last
over
Walmart.
the last Christmas tree.
Walmart, yeah.
Here's my favorite one. I have never felt more shame for humanity than I do right now watching people in Walmart fight over a TV, Alabama book bag, and a $14 blender.
They have book bags in Alabama? Sorry.
Skye. You know, we have a big audience in Alabama.
I'm joking.
and
But
most of them consider themselves literate.
No, what I'm asking is what's an Alabama book
I imagine
bag?
like University of Alabama.
Oh,
you know, like
of course.
merchandise.
Okay, I didn't know if it was
Not an Al.
if it's
I
like
don't
a
think
New
there's
York pizza. Is
I
it
don't
a
think
style
there's a
of book bag?
specific style of book bag that's native to
Or does
Alabama.
it look like a book bag, but it actually carries alcohol? Or what's an Alabama book bag?
It's moonshine.
Moonshine,
It's a
there
book
you go.
bag with a still in it, a hidden still,
Mobile still.
and you can set it up anywhere.
Maybe it's memorabilia from the rock group Alabama.
It could be that too,
That could be too. It could be an Alabama licensed. Yeah,
which is worth fighting over.
I guess so. So are we? Is it getting worse because it's becoming its own tradition? Do you think anyone is actually entering in, like going to Walmart, saying, "I'm ready for a fight because this is now part of my Thanksgiving tradition"?
Here's my theory.
Eat turkey, fight at Walmart.
Think about what people have been doing for the few hours before they arrive at Walmart.
Eating turkey, watching football.
Eating turkey, watching violent sports, drinking too much, and having to contend with nasty family dynamics. There's a lot of pent-up anger and aggression, and then
Yeah.
they come into this massive humanity at Walmart with a goal in mind of getting the Xbox or the
Towels.
Alabama. Yeah,
There was
what
a sale on bath towels,
The
and
energy
people
and the
fought over
anger just explodes out of them. It's just a perfect storm.
It's tough when you're on a budget,
Yeah, I guess.
trying to get those special sale prices.
But when they're taking their hand to the face of some guy in the electronics department, they're actually thinking about their mother-in-law or something that happened.
Really?
Oh,
You
yeah,
think
yeah.
that? So you think if it wasn't for Thanksgiving and family gatherings, people wouldn't be violent at Walmart?
Probably
Is
less.
that what you're saying?
Maybe we just hear about it more because with
Because of social media.
Twitter and
Well, and also it's just built up. It's like, it's almost here. This is it. These are going to be the... At some point, I think Walmart has to say, you know, this isn't really helping our image. This isn't really a good idea. Let's stop doing these special prices just on this one day that create pandemonium.
But I suppose they have to gauge that against the economic plus side of having all
they
these.
bragged that they had like 10 million transactions, 10 million purchases on Black Friday. Their record.
All those stories are why I prefer Amazon. No one ever got in a fist fight.
I know it's
shopping
so
at Amazon,
hard to
right?
get in a fight at Amazon.
Exactly.
Where's the holiday spirit? If we can't get in a fight over a towel
You can get in a fight on eBay.
or a $14, how high quality is a $14 blender? Can I just ask? How long is that blender? How much will you blend?
Could have been discounted severely.
That blender will break before your black eye goes away that you acquired while getting it. That's my theory.
Okay.
Speaking of Thanksgiving,
Right.
The Macy's Day Parade.
Which I did not see.
You didn't see the Macy's Day Parade?
No, but I think...
Don't you wake up every year?
I've never watched it.
Ever?
I've never
watched
it.
any of it?
Never. Have you?
I do. Not now, but I used to when I was growing up.
Yeah.
Well, that's when he was growing up. There was like 2 channels.
Right.
right.
Yeah, when I was growing up, it was a bigger deal.
When I was growing up, there were 4 channels.
We watched it on radio. Yeah.
I waited for the smoke signals from New York. Oh, yeah, it's the Snoopy blimp. It's going right now. So they do musical numbers. Right, and apparently they have a relationship kind of with Broadway, and so they'll take a hot Broadway show and then have the performers perform it to kick off the parade. So this year they did a performance from the musical Kinky Boots.
Which I had not heard of until you brought it up.
Yeah, Kinky Boots is based on a true story. It's a true story.
It's a true
Have you heard this
story,
story?
really?
No, I
Yes,
haven't,
it's
no.
a true
I
story.
thought it was made up by Cyndi Lauper.
She wrote the songs.
Oh.
Cyndi Lauper wrote the songs. She's not a storyteller. And the book was written by Harvey Firestein. So you've got a great combo right there.
Of Miramax? What is he?
No, that's Harvey Weinstein.
Weinstein. That's an
Harvey
easy,
this, Harvey that.
They're very similar.
Harvey Firestein. He's an actor, fairly outspoken gay actor, very big. He originated the role in Hairspray of the mom.
Was he in Mrs. Doubtfire?
No,
The uncle?
that was Robin Williams.
The Aunt Jack?
Oh yeah,
He talks like this.
Right.
Yeah, that's Harvey Firestein.
Right,
He did get
okay.
a few movies. He's like way down here, his voice, and he's really big. And in the original of Hairspray, he was the mom because he was in drag, and that's funny.
Right.
I saw Hairspray in Chicago, and the same role was played by Hervé Valanche. You know who he is?
I don't know these names. I'm sorry.
He's another gay, very overweight man, but not quite
Was
as
he
big
on
a
Hollywood
celebrity.
Squares?
I don't think so.
Who is that
guy? No, that's going back too far. This guy, Hervé Valanche, is most famous as the main joke writer for Whoopi Goldberg and quite often for the Oscars.
Oh.
And so he became kind of a mini celebrity just because of his joke writing. But that's a whole different story. Anyway, back to Kinky Boots. It's a true story of a
what are you
shoe
doing?
company.
Dr. Walton,
Yeah,
sorry.
hey, I'm trying to match these into a Syrian text somehow, and it's just not coming.
We have a legitimate Old Testament scholar here, so we need to make the most of his time and make sure we're talking about topics that are right in his wheelhouse. Okay. So there's well, we don't want to give you too much time because then you'll get tired, because Old Testament scholars tire easily.
Whereas this is exhilarating.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is energizing. There's a shoe company in England, a really old historic shoe company that was going broke, and the son had inherited it from his father and decided to try to turn it around to make boots for cross-dressers and dominatrixes. So basically to make kinky boots that go up like to your thigh and are covered with metal studs and all sorts of stuff like that. And it actually saved the shoe company. So some people thought that was such a heartwarming story, such a family-friendly, heartwarming story, it should be a Broadway musical for the whole family.
Well, you got to admit, it's pretty interesting fodder for a Broadway show.
It is. So Cyndi Lauper...
The kids' book version didn't sell well.
No. Not as well. It's a pop-up thing with these big boots. So Cyndi Lauper wrote the songs. Harvey Firestein wrote the book, which is the words. And it premiered on Broadway, and it's won a bunch of awards. So at Macy's Day Parade, let's do a big number from Kinky Boots to open up the Macy's Day Parade, Thanksgiving morning, living rooms across America.
Kids watching.
Kids, dogs.
Santa didn't show up in Kinky Boots.
Grandma. Oh, that would have been great.
Great tie-in.
So it didn't go over well with everyone. It didn't go over well with everyone, which led to some interesting headlines. Kinky Boots' performance at Macy's Day Parade provokes outrage. One part of Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade wasn't agreeable to America's social conservatives. That would be the performance by the cast of Kinky Boots, an award-winning Broadway musical about a straight-laced shoe factory owner's partnership with a drag queen who helps him turn his business around. Although the show's message is of acceptance and tolerance, and the performance was relatively tame, right-wingers across America took to social networks to voice their outrage. So Skye and I were talking about this before because it's kind of tricky because it was tame in comparison to like Miley Cyrus on the VMA Awards.
And there really wasn't flesh. There's no flesh. The boots were too high.
Well, the boots go up so high and have these massively huge heels. But there were models, in kind of dominatrix wear and or leathery lingerie stuff parading around in their kinky boots.
And the character who's the company owner,
yes, is wearing a suit. Except he has the suit on top, but he's wearing no pants.
Well, he's got boxer shorts.
He's in boxer shorts and then kinky boots. So
which is, my normal Saturday morning attire also.
That's next year's Halloween theme,
go.
Right?
Well, those kinky boot characters.
Yeah. And then they have to support. It's very Hairspray-ish. It's one of those when you realize how much of the Broadway creative community is pro-gay and or actually gay. It's not at all surprising that they say, "Oh, we love this story." It's like Priscilla, Queen of the Desert would be another example. Have you ever seen that
No.
film? Okay, it's a film they turned into a musical about drag queens that go across Australia in a camper.
Oh, I thought it was about
and learn
lizards
valuable
or something.
lessons. No, it's not about lizards. Well, and the boots may have been
March
lizard.
of the Penguins kind
the
of.
boots may have been made of lizard.
Oh.
Because they're kinky. Anyway, so what's interesting is as I'm reading the comments on this on both sides, it's clear just how far this gap is in what we perceive as reality now. And you have kind of the old school, because 30 years ago, cross-dressing and transvestitism, is that a word? Transvestitism, is that an Old Testament word?
Transvestitery.
We're still considered almost universally as dysfunctions.
An aberration.
Yes.
An abomination.
That's going back further.
Oh, that's Leviticus
biblical.
18.
Now we're in biblical.
Right.
Yeah. Toiva. Yeah.
But you go back to the American Medical Association, and these things were considered.
American Psychiatric Association.
Yes.
Actually.
Yeah. Them too. And the Pediatric Association, and Jews for Jesus. And no, I'm making stuff up now. And then
Did you just start making stuff up?
It's hard to know exactly when that line gets crossed.
The line, it's imagination. Imagination. Disney song. So what's clear is that there's still people that are still there saying men dressed as women parading around in dresses and makeup is not healthy. It's a dysfunction. It's not the model we want to portray to our kids. But we've got another whole group that have moved on to, no, you can't say that anymore. You can't say that's wrong. You can't say whatever your choice is, whoever you are. And so that Skye and I were watching the song that they did on the show, and it was basically a celebration of differences.
Right.
You are who you are, be who you are.
So some people see that song and they go, "Oh, what a great message for kids! It's about self-esteem
It's accepting yourself.
Accepting yourself, and it's a perfect fit for the Macy's Day Parade."
Right.
Whereas other people look at the same song and the same performers and go, "This is what's wrong with America."
You're promoting depravity on Thanksgiving.
You can't do this. You should be you and I can be me by talking about I like apple pie and you like pumpkin pie.
No, why can't we do that?
Yeah, I don't know.
Why? Yeah. Why do we go immediately to
the most extreme
sexual preferences and then say you should be talking to your kids about this, and we're helping you? So Harvey Fierstein came out to defend the performance and said, we've got to get the conversation going. It's good that people were offended because it continues the conversation, and that's how you change people's minds. So it's clear, that we're saying, hey, this needs to be on morning television so that America can change their minds about cross-dressing and transvestite.
Where others feel the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade should not be politicized or used as a cultural instrument of conversation.
Yeah.
And the focus should stay on where it always should be, which is on buying
consumerism
stuff for Christmas.
Consumerism,
Right.
and not consuming kinky footwear.
Right.
So why do we have to have the conversation about those sexual identities, and we don't have to have the conversation about Christianity and faith and those things?
Because we've been having that conversation for 2,000 years.
And
and we've solved it all.
Right.
And because Christians are the one that oppressed the drag queens. You see, Dr. Walton.
Because the cultural elites are pulling one of those talk show things and just, next issue, boom, Christianity's done, and move on.
This is cool. This is cool.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay. There's no way to put that back together. It just seems like it's a gulf that's ever widening between, no, all of this is now normal, and if you don't believe it, you are a homophobe. You are...
Well, not only that, but there is no normal. If everything's normal, then nothing is normal. And you can't say this is normal and that's not.
There are things that are wrong.
Yes.
Okay, if you said, hey, I'm doing a new musical and the whole cast does the musical in blackface, can you put us on the Thanksgiving Day parade? Because we're bringing back the historical tradition of minstrel shows, and it's educational. It's so kids can learn what our history of minstrel shows were. Macy's isn't going to put that on TV. Yeah. Because we mostly all agree that that's bad. So it's funny because on one hand we're saying stop talking about good and bad. It's just different. People are just different. And on the other hand we're saying no, but that's bad.
To put this though into some historical context, there's never been one American culture. There's always been multiple Americas, and there's always been tensions between those different cultures. Whether you're talking white Anglo-Saxon Protestant versus the European and Catholic immigrants that came in the late 1800s, early 1900s.
Or Native Americans versus Pilgrims.
Right, or South versus North.
Cowboys and Indians.
Exactly. So there's always been these tensions, and whoever holds the reins of power or media presents one thing, and then there's other people who go, oh, no, that's not the real America, and that's wrong, and now this is the new front. This
so what do we do?
Conservative and liberal.
What do we do, Skye? What do we do?
I don't know.
Do we need to boycott Macy's? Do we need to...
I was at Macy's this weekend.
Oh, great.
And had I known about Kinky Boots, I would never have set foot inside.
Tell me you didn't buy anything.
I did buy something.
Oh, no.
But they were Christmas ornaments. So does that make it okay?
Celebrating what Christmas? Jesus Christmas? Yeah. Santa Christmas?
Well, they weren't explicitly Christian
Kinky
ornaments.
Boots Christmas. They would make cute ornaments.
I just got a great idea for your Christmas present.
What? I'm afraid to ask. I don't want to know. So you don't have an answer. Is that what you're telling me?
I know, but I think we have to decide which hills to die on and what is really worthy of our outrage.
Yeah.
So that we can express it on Black Friday by punching some poor woman at the electronics counter at Walmart.
I think even trickier. I'm not going to punch anyone at Walmart. I think even trickier is even knowing how to respond to things like this. You're just reading the comments online and all the tweets and people on both sides just saying, you are completely wrong. And no, you are completely wrong. And and we have this conversation a lot of when is a Christian supposed to speak truth at the culture versus truth amongst ourselves. When is it okay? Hey, you're an Old Testament scholar.
Just happen to be here.
Do you ever get into any of this kind of cultural stuff, or is Assyrian cuneiform just too interesting?
No, sometimes we do. And usually I'm on the side that's saying, as Christians, we often expect that we're going to find every answer to every issue in the Bible.
Yeah.
And that's not really correct.
Uh-oh.
That we shouldn't expect to
Strike
find...
one.
Shouldn't expect... You can get away with talking about Kinky Boots, and the minute I start talking about
now we're in trouble. Now we're in trouble.
Those cuneiform clay tablets were actually, they used stiletto heels to make those.
And they danced the words into them.
And we think we know what they mean. Anyway, so, it doesn't solve all of these issues for us. I just taught on Proverbs today, and the idea that, we are supposed to pursue wisdom and practice wisdom, but wisdom doesn't just come easily. It comes with long work and mentors and things of that sort, by which we understand wisdom. Wisdom being that which brings order to our lives and our world. And lots of times we look around and it doesn't look very orderly at all.
So why do you think so many Christians want to take the Bible and just reduce it to a set of applicable principles with easy, turn out the answer kind of approach.
Well, in one sense, then you don't have to think. I mean, if you can just kind of, use it as a vending machine.
Proverbs 4:7 solved it.
Yeah, and get your answer. Then I don't have to think about it, and then I can speak, dogmatically, pontifically even about the issue. And unfortunately, along the way, we pull a lot of texts into use where they simply have nothing to say to what they're being used for.
Can I put you on the spot and ask you for an example of how you've seen that done?
Sure.
Like a text that you think is abused in such a way?
Well, in the issue that's kind of on the table here, when we start talking about gender issues and same-sex marriages and sexual preferences in the priesthood and things of that sort, lots of people on both sides end up going to Genesis 2:24, that for this cause a man shall leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. And both sides try to use that as if that's going to do their work for them and settle the issue.
Speak authoritatively to the issue of one man, one woman.
And I think that in one sense, both sides are using it inappropriately and incorrectly, just to try to get points thrown up on their side of the ledger.
Yeah. Yeah, I was on a Christian website once and where people were asking questions, and one of the questions someone asked, honestly looking for help and advice, was, is it a sin for a Christian to get a tattoo? And I was kind of like, oh, that's nuts. Okay, well, somebody help her out. And 3 of the 5 responses said yes. It is a sin to get a tattoo because of,
Deuteronomy 22, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, do not make markings on your body. And I was just like, you don't know how to read the Bible, do you?
Well, again, that's why I do lots of work in backgrounds, because lots of those things have an explanation that fits in the ancient world, and it's not at all what's going on in the modern world.
Right.
And so the markings on a person's body in the ancient world served a totally different function.
Or the jewelry on a woman
which
in
was
the
what?
classical world.
What were tattoos used for?
Tattoos would typically be used to either have something to do with the loyalty to the god that you are worshiping, or that would mark you in some way for magical purposes.
Oh.
So it's kind of about divination and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
Yeah.
And again,
but it was another way for the Israelites to stand out, to be different, to be called apart.
Right.
Which is not quite as true.
That reminds me
for
of
us.
my favorite tattoo story. Tom Arnold? Comedian, actor.
Husband of Roseanne Barr at one point.
So when they got married, he converted to Judaism, and to show she's Jewish.
Okay.
And to show his loyalty to his new faith and to his new wife, he had a Star of David tattooed on one side of his chest and a picture of Roseanne on the other side. And then the rabbi informed him after the fact that the tattoos are a violation of the Torah. And of course, that marriage didn't last, so I don't know what he did about that.
Yeah, that's
why
there are different reasons to
leap.
think twice about marking your body permanently,
right.
But scriptural forbiddance is not one of them,
right,
as far as we know. Should we talk about alcohol?
No, let's not.
Okay.
As you reach for your cup, what are you doing?
I don't know.
What are you communicating, Phil?
Should we talk about alcohol? Should we talk about Diet Dr. Pepper? Is there anything in the Bible about aspartame or other diet drinks?
No, the Hebrew word is clearly splenda, not aspartame.
Wow.
Okay.
There's an endorsement.
We are talking with John Walton, Dr. John Walton. That's Dr. John to you.
Who's been on our show before?
Where's my...
Is he our first repeat guest?
No, my mother.
That's right. She was on more than
mother.
That's
Does that not
appropriate.
count because it was...
No, that counts.
Hey, my computer just went to sleep.
Uh-oh.
Hey, wake up. Hey, oh well, show's done.
I have my iPad working.
Oh, hey, it came back. Yay. It's back. Okay. So, John Walton, you're the professor of what are you?
Old Testament.
Old Testament.
Yes.
Is that just your title, professor of Old Testament?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
At Wheaton College.
Yes.
You were at Moody Bible Institute before then.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So you come from the conservative side of theology.
Most people would recognize that to be true. Yes.
Yes. So we're not bringing in a wacko way out there.
Off the
You
reservation.
wouldn't describe
Depends
yourself
who you ask.
as a wacko, would you?
No, not usually. No.
Okay. Does anyone describe themselves as a wacko, or is wacko only an externally applied term?
It's usually externally applied, but the person who would call themselves a wacko is probably very self-aware.
Yeah, and probably fun at a dinner party.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can get one of those on the show. A self-described wacko. Okay. You just spent the first 7 months of 2013 traveling around the United States and 15 other countries. It was the John Walton World Tour.
Yes, it was.
Who was your opening act? Was it REO Speedwagon or
No,
Peter, Paul, and Mary?
That would be hard because, not all of them are around anymore.
Well, yeah, but you can replace members of a band. People do it all the time. This is our new Mary.
Yeah. No, it was just tough to get an opening act.
Really?
Yeah.
Because you're so wacko.
Well, usually an opening act, gets publicity out of the deal, and that just didn't have a lot of room for that. Yeah.
Right. You didn't feel okay. What John was traveling about was, and the reason we had you on the show is because you wrote a book called The Lost World of Genesis 1, which is kind of a reexamination of Genesis 1 in terms of your particular area of interest, which is ancient worlds and the thinking of ancient people.
Right.
Why does that even matter?
Well, it matters because the Bible existed in that ancient world, came to exist in that ancient world. The people that are the audience for the Bible and the authors for the Bible live in that ancient world, and therefore that ancient world defines a lot about who they are.
Okay.
Now, God was telling them things that would help draw them away from certain elements in that ancient world, but many other things, it's just part of who they were.
Right. And one thing that you say is that the Bible is written for us, not to us.
Correct.
And that seems to be a big deal?
It is. It is. We're reading someone else's mail, and therefore we have to try to get into that world if we're going to make sense of it.
But wouldn't God make it make sense for us directly?
The important things, but there's a lot of other things as well.
Well, but to be fair, he didn't give us the Bible in English, right? So the way it originally came down was not immediately accessible to us. It has to be translated, it has to be transmitted, it has to be interpreted.
But that's not, I don't want to hear that.
Yes,
I want to know that God is talking directly to me and that it's easy. I had a pastor once that would end every sermon with, I love the Bible because it's just so clear. It's just so clear, and then one day he did a 5-minute discourse in the middle of a sermon on the role of women in ministry according to the clarity of the Bible. And one of our friends walked out of church that day and just said, time to find a new church because it's not that clear.
Well, we learned from the Reformers that we should value and recognize the clarity of Scripture. They had a longer word for it, of course. But
what was their longer word?
Oh, was that the perspicuity?
Oh,
yes.
That's awesome.
So that the clarity of Scripture, and we adopt that and we say, yes, the Scripture should be clear. But remember that those same Reformers wrote dozens and dozens of commentaries and theologies to try to explain things.
Right.
So the basic message is clear, but there's an awful lot that we need to work for.
Right. In other words, what they were saying is there's enough clarity here that we should allow the common man to read this.
Exactly.
That we don't need to intermediate everything. But at the same time...
Well, the more you want to get, the harder you've got to work.
Yeah. Okay, so, and this led you, as an Old Testament scholar, and you've written tons of stuff for Zondervan. You part of the NIV Application Bible is your stuff, right? Genesis, you did Genesis.
Job.
And Job.
One of my favorites.
Two big hits. Yeah. When are we doing like a big budget Job movie? Like
that could be
Aronofsky.
Yeah.
That would be fun.
They'd get upset about the ending, though.
And while you were studying Genesis, one of the things that you started looking at was Genesis 1, Genesis 2, the origin stories and how to understand them with the knowledge you were gaining of the ancient world. And you came to kind of a striking premise, a new premise. Since you've been touring about this for the last year, I assume you've got a pretty good elevator pitch now to explain your point of view. And you can go back to an old podcast with John Walton where I explained this way back. But the elevator pitch, honed over thousands of miles of travel.
House, home. That is, you can talk about origins by talking about somebody building a house. Or you can talk about it in terms of somebody making that house a home. And so when I tell the story about the place where we live, I can talk about it as a house, electricity, plumbing, roof, foundation, et cetera, or I can talk about it as a home. This room's the den, this room's the sunroom, and how we use it and how we turned it into our home. Both are origins stories. Okay. So the question becomes, okay, if you want to talk about origins, which origin story is most important? And my contention is that in the biblical text and in the ancient Near East, the home story is a much more important origin story. And I would even say that theologically, the home story is a more important story.
Because in the ancient world, they weren't as preoccupied with material beginnings.
Right. So if it's a house story, then you're saying Genesis 1 would be about molecules and atoms.
Material, objects.
The stuff being made. But your contention is when you look at the thinking of the ancient world, when they told origin stories, they usually weren't talking about that.
No. They obviously knew they lived in a material universe, but they weren't interested in that, and they didn't feel like they could explore it or say much about it.
Was the assumption of a static world where these things have always existed, but maybe not in an ordered way?
It's not entirely that way, because they still talk about the beginning of all things.
Well, yeah, I'm thinking about
when the gods had no names.
Right.
Because naming was an important creative act. And so
Adam got to do it.
Yes, exactly. Yes, exactly.
But the focus was on the ordering of the universe and the creation of that home.
Yes. Order is the key.
Right.
And so their origin stories are ordering stories. Again, using the house home, a house could be standing there for a century and be a house. But then when you make it your home, you move in and there's no order. It's all in boxes.
So who was moving in to creation in Genesis 1 based on this premise?
We've got to get the theme song from the Jeffersons now.
Moving on up. I need to learn how to play it on my ukulele. To the east side.
People and God. The whole idea was that God was making a place that would function for an ordered world for people, and that he was then moving in to also be part of it. So at that point in the lecture, I usually say, so welcome to God's B&B. I mean, this is
bed and breakfast.
Bed and breakfast idea. Or
D&D, Dungeons and Dragons.
Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, different.
That's
C&C?
chapter 3. Chapter 3.
What's C&C?
I don't even know.
Yeah. So at any rate, that's that idea of which is the most important origin story to tell. And so God making a home for us. So I'll point to John 14, where Jesus is saying to the disciples, I'm going away, and I know you're upset about that, but don't worry, I'm going to prepare a place for you. And then I'll come back and get you so that where I am, you will also be. And that's not the first time he did that. That's really what was going on in Genesis, in creation, where God was preparing a place for us, and the intention was that where he was, we would be.
You say that we shouldn't think of Genesis 1 and 2 as communicated to Adam and Eve, but rather imagine a scenario, something like Moses communicating to the Israelites in the wilderness. Why does that make a difference?
Well, because it's the text that we are that we are considering to be Scripture.
Okay.
And that text doesn't derive, or even though, it doesn't derive from Adam and Eve
scenario. It wasn't a journalist standing next to Adam and Eve copying down.
The videotape was not rolling.
And the traditional view is that Moses wrote the Torah, including Genesis,
Sure.
so it would have been to his community that this story was communicated.
So you have to think about him trying to communicate this in the best way for the audience that he's got in front of him, that Israelite audience with all of their background in the world in which they live, and he's going to communicate it into that. It's not like God talking to Adam and Eve who have no background at all.
Right. They were backgroundless.
Yes, they were backgroundless.
That's kind of a scary thought. They had no holiday traditions whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean,
or holidays.
So every action movie you've ever seen where the hero has no memory,
that's Adam and Eve.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the implications being, and this is some of what we covered the last time we were on the podcast, the implications being that a lot of the fights that have erupted in the church and in the culture around interpretation of Genesis may possibly be ill-conceived fights.
Right, they're just cashmere towels.
At Walmart.
What? Oh, I see. It's because we've had too much turkey.
Because we're taking modern questions and imposing them upon an ancient text that doesn't want to answer them.
Right.
And so we're fighting about stuff that the text never intended us to argue about.
Now that seems, because a lot of people have a lot of energy kind of invested in this fight. I mean, it's more recent. I mean, I just finished reading Mark Knoll's Scandal of the Evangelical Mind, and one of the things he goes through is what is the actual history of creation science, and it's not nearly as old as you think.
Right.
It really,
6,000 years?
No, not the Earth, silly. It really originated, in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and then was kind of really born into the modern American conscious in 1960 with the publishing of one book in particular by a geologist. And that birthed creation science. But it's been so ingrained in the evangelical psyche over the last 50 years, basically is all the longer it's been around, that we now, we have museums about it and we have curriculum about it. And I get homeschool catalogs that say, 100% evolution free, which is basically to say you will never find anything in our catalog that will touch on what the secular world says is accurate science.
Right.
And so, what I get concerned about with that is now, because I also just finished reading Richard Dawkins' The God Delusion and reading the arguments from some of these very kind of rabid, new atheists saying, okay, why are you so upset about religious thought? What is really, and for many of them, the things that have really ticked them off the most is the opposition to science, because they're scientists and they're trying to do science and to have, either school boards or whole colleges saying we're throwing away most of the last 100 years of modern science really makes them crabby.
Right. So the one thing that Richard Dawkins and Ken Ham can agree on is that there's a war.
And they
both benefit from it.
They love the war.
Yeah, that's...
And so they each want to portray the other in the wildest, wackiest terms.
Because they're really in the munitions business.
Yeah.
Because it's like Jerry Maguire, where Ken Ham needs to come in to Dawkins and say, you complete me. Because without him, he's got no purpose.
That is going to make more people upset than anything he or I have said so far.
Possibly.
Help me, help you.
Yeah.
Say something outrageous, please, because my sales are flagging.
Uh-huh. All right. So
I had something to say, but I completely forgot.
It's gone. I'll jump in.
Okay.
So you go 15 countries. How many events?
Oh, wait a minute. Yes. So this tour came about.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. There's a tour, right?
Yes.
You and REO Speedwagon in a bus on the road, giant eagle on the side, really cool, coast to coast. And the tour was sponsored by BioLogos. BioLogos is the group that was started. It was started by
Francis Collins.
Francis Collins. To try to create peace, right? It's basically an effort to bring science and the Bible back together.
It's like the United Nations.
Yes, to say that...
conservative Christians hate the United Nations.
Well, how many people can I offend on this podcast?
That's a terrible analogy to make, Skye.
You know what I mean.
Terrible.
League of Nations, then.
It's like the European Union. Oh, no.
This is not to try to get everybody to think the same way. It's to try to get people to say, there are different ways to cut this, and a number of different positions can be defended from a sound biblical, hermeneutical, theological point of view.
Right.
And so let's get the information on the table and start figuring out which hills are worth dying on and which ones aren't worth dying on.
Which was also the conclusion of the Evangelical Council for Biblical Inerrancy when they looked at the issue.
So you can be evangelical, Orthodox, believe in biblical inerrancy, and not be a Ken Ham creationist. Is that the argument?
That's true. Biologos, of course, favors something they call evolutionary creation, in which they say, the evolutionary elements are all in place. That's fine. We might not know exactly how it happens. That's fine. But God can work that way, and that's okay.
And is that what you're trying to promote?
No.
Is that what you are all about?
Oh,
no.
Here we go. No.
It is not.
What are you trying to
on
promote?
the precipice here.
I'm trying to promote an understanding of what the Bible's claims are. And
Which says that there is no evolution
that
in Leviticus.
No. As we understand
Job.
what the Bible's claims are, then we can figure out what scientific options are open for us to consider. It doesn't solve the scientific issues. It doesn't promote evolution or non-evolution. It doesn't promote old Earth or young Earth. It simply says, here are the things that the Bible's doing, and this kind of shows us the areas that we have to defend.
So I have a question. It's a question that's been on my mind since the last time you were on the podcast.
Oh.
Not like constantly since you were here.
He
But
can't sleep. He hasn't slept since you left.
Okay, so very often when we get into these science, faith debates, fights, wars, whatever you want to call them, the assumption is that faith needs to accommodate to science, or faith needs to completely jettison science and say, I don't care what science says, we're going to stick with revelation or whatever it might be. So I started doing some poking around, and the underlying premise of modern science is uniformitarianism.
Uniformitarianism, yes.
Is it? Well, okay, different, whatever.
If you put it in a terrarium.
Well, I have it here. Uniformitarianism is the one I found, but uniformitarianism, I guess, is another one.
Okay.
It's Wikipedia. Somebody must have gotten it wrong.
For
on
Norman.
Wikipedia. Okay.
Norman.
So that is the basically idea that the laws of nature apply everywhere the same. And
in all time.
In all time. So the law of gravity is the same here as it is on the other side of the galaxy, and it's the same now as it was 10 million years ago.
Right.
And that's the foundation of science.
And it could never change.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, just on the surface, as a Christian, I have to go, no. Because don't we believe that both, at least once in the past, as well as at some point in the future, the universe has changed? The laws that currently govern it don't always apply everywhere all the time.
When did it change in the past?
Well, I'm thinking of a couple of things. One is miracles are a violation of the laws of nature.
That doesn't mean they've changed.
Well, it means they can change.
Means they can't. That means they're malleable.
Right.
Yeah.
They change. It's malleable. They change.
Okay. Are you buying this?
I'm ready to talk whenever.
Okay, wait. So here's what I'm trying to work through. We believe that at some point in the future the universe is going to change. Right? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Romans 8, 1 Corinthians 15,
Yeah.
Jesus' resurrection is a model, right?
New heaven, new earth.
Yeah. Totally. And therefore, don't we also believe that at some point in the past, the world we currently occupy is not the same in all of its dynamics as the one God created because of the fall, because of sin, correct?
Right.
So then, is this conclusion correct? That is it possible that science may be able to accurately describe the universe as it currently exists, but contemporary science has no access either to the new heaven and new earth, nor does it have access to the world or universe prior
to the fall.
So to talk about, in a scientific way, ultimate origins or ultimate conclusions is really beyond the scope of what we can do.
Well, scientists would even tell you that they can't talk about what existed before the Big Bang, because the Big Bang is when natural laws snapped into place, and science can only be done in the context of natural laws.
Right. But did the fall affect natural laws? I think is Skye's.
Just as someday they may well
be undone
or changed.
There's nothing in the text that suggests that the fall impacted natural laws. again, if the description of the pre-fall world has anything similar to, I assume that when Adam and Eve walked around, gravity held them on the earth.
You don't know that.
I don't know that. But see, that's the thing. The Bible doesn't suggest anything that was any different. But when they talk about uniformitarianism, they're talking about the situation that has to maintain in order for science to do its work and for science to operate. They have to assume that was the case. Now, that doesn't mean that nothing could ever violate them, although some would say, no, nothing can ever violate those. But that's not necessarily so. God can violate them whenever he wants, so to speak, but that wouldn't change the fact that there are natural laws. Otherwise, it wouldn't be violating.
Sure.
So in that sense, uniformitarianism is simply describing what scientists assume as they do the work of science.
So when Jesus was raised, he was changed. His body was changed, as Paul talks about. He was walk through walls, he could fly, he could appear and disappear. And Paul uses the resurrection of Jesus as a model, he says, for our coming resurrection, as well as the changing of the world when it too will be set free from the curse, he says in Romans 8. So you have continuity and discontinuity in Jesus' resurrection. It's still his body, same body, not a replacement body, but it's changed. So if that's what we believe as Christians is coming to the universe.
Don't count on being a scientist in the new creation.
Right. Well, but no,
Just saying.
No, there could very well be scientists in new creation because
my thermometer doesn't work right anymore.
But there will be new science, a new way of operating in the new creation that we don't know yet, right? Just as Jesus' body operated in a way that doesn't make sense.
There might be a new uniformitarianism.
It seems like you can easily project that forward. Projecting it backwards is a little more tenuous.
That's my question. But
it feels tenuous.
So then when God says in Genesis 1 that it was all very good, obviously, it didn't stay very good because sin and evil and all that came into play. I mean, what do you do with that?
Very good is not a term that pertains to righteousness, morality, or perfection. It's a term that applies to things working the way that they were designed to work. Okay. And when God says it is very good, it means that order has been achieved in that area, in that issue, and therefore it's ready to function properly. I use the example when I get on a plane, I assume that the pilot's in the cockpit going through a checklist. Check, check, check. Very good, very good, very good. Saying it's all ready to run. That doesn't mean he's making them at that very moment. It doesn't mean it's perfect, although I hope it is functional. So that's, flaps, good. Engines, good. Food, next.
So after the rebellion in Genesis 3, does that rebellion affect the functioning of the world?
Sure. It affects it because before the fall, you had order that had been brought into the midst of non-order. There were still things that were not ordered. The sea was still there. It won't be a new creation. So there was still non-order there. But there was order being brought, sufficient order that we could survive and function. It's good.
The world was not perfect before the fall.
Right, but
because it was not ordered.
It wasn't
completely ordered.
It was not completely ordered.
Right.
Which is part of humanity's purpose.
Right. Exactly.
To continue the order.
Right. So it was ordered. But then with the fall, disorder comes in. Disorder's bad. Non-order's not bad. It's just not yet ordered.
Neutral order.
So we have non-order, order, and disorder. Okay? So that disorder is brought in, and now that really affects how things can function. It especially affects how we, as God's vice-regents in his image, are able to continue the ordering process. And so all creation groans because there was a schedule and we blew it, and therefore that's not taking place the way that it would have otherwise. And so that's creation's groaning that will only be resolved when disorder is resolved, and even when all non-order is resolved, as it's described in Revelation 21.
Okay.
Wow.
Well, that blows some big assumptions out of the primordial sea, doesn't it?
So you've been traveling, talking about this, and the reason BioLogos gave you a grant to travel and do this is because they're trying to bring some peace.
They're trying to bring information.
Arrest disorder. Would you say?
Yes. They recognize that I can bring biblical information to the table that can help bring peaceful conversation.
Okay. So how did it go?
It went really very, very well.
I mean, from your expectation, what did you expect going into it? Did you have any idea?
No, I had no idea what to expect.
And you went to how many different places? 15 countries, but how many talks did you give?
Over 70.
Okay.
And I didn't know whether to expect kind of militancy or antagonism, aggressiveness, or don't care. I didn't know what to expect. Because when you go into, we know that this is an issue in America, but is it an issue anywhere else?
Right. Is it an issue anywhere else?
More or less, yes. It is something that people are interested in. It's not a war necessarily in other places. Although, for instance, when I was in Eastern Europe, all of the places where I was had a recent history of communism. And for them, atheism and communism and evolution were all bundled together, that they all implied one another. And so to talk about, well, the Bible doesn't necessarily rule out an evolutionary process, which is, again, is as far as I was going, to say, what does it rule out? If it doesn't rule that out, well, that's to them like saying that doesn't work at all.
Right.
It's like saying the Bible,
is communist manifesto.
Yeah. So I had to deal with those kinds of things. But even so, I presented it in such a way that they were just hearing the information and receiving it, and I tried to give them space to make up their own minds. I made it clear that I wasn't there to try to, get converts signed on the line to thinking the way I do. I was there to try to help them see information that could help them think through the issues.
And is that your end goal? What's your end goal in this? What was the purpose of your tour?
Yeah. My end goal was not to make everybody think the way I think. My end goal was that we understand what there is room for in this tent that we call the church. What's there room for where you can be biblically sound, theologically founded, hermeneutically appropriate, and what's the variation? What are the things that can fit inside that tent? I often told people, you might feel like you're not ready to change your mind at all on this. That you've kind of, you're just not in a position where you're ready to rethink it. But I said, you have to think about your kids and your grandkids. How are you going to respond when they come home saying, I believe this science or that science or the other science? Does that mean I'm not a Christian anymore?
Right.
Are we going to keep doing this line of saying, if you don't agree with a young earth or totally anti-evolution or this and that you can't be a Christian? I'm saying, that's where we've got the danger signs.
Right.
And we have to start recognizing that the church is not just everybody who looks exactly like me.
So I imagine some people hear that and they think Dr. Walton is taking down the fences completely. Mm-hmm. And you're not just moving them, but you're removing them. Mm-hmm. That you can buy into anything and be an Orthodox biblical Christian. Obviously, that's not the case.
Right, and they would not get that impression from my talk because I talk about how we apply hermeneutics appropriately, what theological parameters are important, and most importantly, what is it that the Bible claims? We do formulate our parameters by what the Bible claims, but there's some things that it claims clearly, and there are other things that it doesn't make claims on. And in that sense, that's where we might take down some fences and say, we thought the Bible was making a claim there, but it's really not. And at that point, we say, so other people could have other conclusions.
That's got to be really threatening to people, though, who've built their identity and understanding of Christianity on a claim that actually is not found in Scripture.
Right. But we've been doing that for thousands of years. Right. I wasn't supposed to play cards.
Yeah, but
we come up with all sorts of things that then I go back and say, "What? That's not in there at all."
There are arbitrary, moral codes and things like that. But then there's other people say, "Oh, that whole Jesus literally rising from the dead thing. That's not really essential, is it?" And
well, again, that's why I deal with what are the biblical claims, because there's no question that the Bible claims Jesus rose bodily from the dead. Right. I mean, that's a clear claim, and we want to explore those things and find out what the claims are. Every time I talked, I always started with biblical authority and my commitment to it and how it works. And of course, that's where I started to bring in, it's an ancient document. And so authority works in this kind of framework.
And one of the first pushbacks you get when you really explain your case, and if people go down the road to say, wait a minute, so then if he's right, maybe the earth isn't young, maybe an old earth is an acceptable biblical alternative. One of the first objections is, well, yeah, but there can't be death before the fall, because death entered the world with Adam, so therefore there couldn't be evolution because nothing could have died. And someone hits you with that, and do you have an easy response?
Yes, I do.
Because I've been hit with that multiple times.
Sure. I basically take them to the Bible.
Why? Why do you do that, John?
And I say, first of all, we've got dust here. What does dust refer to?
Dust.
Little bits of dirt.
Yeah, exactly. But can you shape little bits of dirt? No, you would shape clay. You wouldn't shape dust. So this is not just about kind of a craftsman idea. Furthermore, it's not about chemistry. The Israelites didn't know chemistry. Their periodic table was very small. And so they didn't have any chemistry to think about. So what are they thinking about? Well, the biblical text tells us. They are thinking about mortality. Chapter 3, dust you are, and to dust you shall return. Dust pertains to mortality. That means if the text is making a point that people are formed from dust, that means they are mortal. And some people would say, but wait a minute, Paul says that people were created immortal because we are subject to death because of sin. And I would just say, no, we are subject to death because of sin, because when we sinned, we lost the antidote to our mortality. After all, if God created us immortal, then why did he put a tree of life in the middle of the garden? Immortal people do not need a tree of life.
Oh.
And therefore, people were created mortal, and the tree of life was the remedy. And we lost that at the fall, and therefore, because of sin, we are subject to death, our own natural mortality.
And we get back the tree of life in Revelation.
Wow.
That's... Okay.
Oh, yeah. We just got to do this again. There's so much here.
You don't have to agree with anything that was just said. That's okay, unless I said it. And then actually you do, because it's my show. But these guys, no, it's okay if you don't agree. What we're trying to do is provoke conversation.
Which will no doubt happen on your Facebook page.
At least the provoke part.
Which means, in Latin, I believe, to poke with a stick, doesn't it? What should I sing about?
Give us the Tree of Life song.
Oh, John Walton toured the globe, talking about the Bible, a book that's really old, and how the Tree of Life may have been the only thing that gave us immortality. Is that what you're saying?
Life.
Some people may not agree. That's not what they see when they look and see in the Bible. They might read it different, but that...
This is maybe proof against evolution.
Sorry, I'm not evolving a very good song.
No.
Did I mention that I went to bed at 4 o'clock this morning and got up and did chapel at Wheaton College, and now I'm doing a podcast and trying to make up a song on very little sleep? So it's great to have an Old Testament guy around to ask questions and see if your thinking is sound. But please put down your arms and stop the war over science, 'cause it's not productive. Okay, I'm going to wrap it up there before I fall asleep, and I can't think of anything else to say. Thanks for being on the show, John.
As always.
We'll have you back again, Skye.
Look forward to it.
See you next time. Go in peace.